the Super Bowl. I feel like black and gold, going back to the Super Bowl. I feel like black and gold, going back to the Super Bowl. I feel like black and gold, going back to the Super Bowl. I feel like black and gold, going back to the Super Bowl. I feel like black and gold, going back to the Super Bowl. I feel like black.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
Thank you for listening to my daddy's podcast.
Hey, don't let these tears fool you. There's all dog around this mug. I'm good.
Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, Timothy J. Jones. And yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. Shouts out to everybody that's tuning in right now, no matter where you are, wherever you may be. On this edition, we're going to be talking a little bit about the roster cuts of the New Orleans Saints. The Saints trimmed their roster down to the final 53. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the cuts. Were there shocks? Were you shocked about some of the guys actually making the team? We're going to get into that. And of course, we're going to read some of your comments. I really do appreciate your time. Shouts out to everybody that came over to the NFC South Roundtable that took place earlier this evening. If you're watching this on a Tuesday, Berto, James, and Clay and myself, we were over there like we are every single Tuesday on the Roundtable NFC South channel. So make sure that you subscribe to that. Go to youtube.com, search NFC South Roundtable. Very exciting stuff right there, man. But let's go ahead and get into it, man. I just want to, kind of make this a little quick. I apologize, man. I've been talking all day. Then done a couple podcasts today, but nevertheless, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of these roster cuts, the shockers. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put this up on the screen. Just bear with me just a second. I'm going to go ahead and put this up. And I apologize if people can't see it. But this is the official roster cuts of the New Orleans Saints for, cutting their roster down from 90 to 53. A couple of names, Jonathan Abram, Ugo Amadi, Jesse Davis, Andrew Dowell, Khaleke Hudson, Shane Lemieux, Stanley Morgan Jr., James Robinson, Equimidius St. Brown, Roderick Teamer, and Jojan Williams. We'll stop right there. Looking at that list, I think that Jonathan Abram is a little bit of a shock to me. I thought that maybe he'll make the 53-man roster. It seemed like it was a competition going on between he and Jordan Howden. But it's pretty obvious that Jordan Howden won that. Youth is always going to reign supreme, especially when there's no separation between the two individuals. But I do expect for Jonathan Abram to be a part of this team, maybe on the practice squad. Ugo Amadi, that was a shock to me because he's such a good special teams guy. I thought that maybe the Saints would carry him over. He's a guy that I feel like will probably be on the practice squad as well. Looking at some of these other names, Andrew Dowell, probably in another world, he probably would have made the team. But when you have guys like Anthony Orji coming on, DeMarco Jackson, those two young studs right there, you're going to get that help on special teams. So I think he was kind of the odd man out here. I think, I have an appreciation for what Andrew Dowell is as a player. I think that he'll probably end up on somebody else's team contributing in special teams. As far as some of these other names, Stanley Morgan, the Saints did sign him to a deal, so I thought that maybe he would be like that gunner, but I don't think he did enough. Maybe the Saints felt like, there was some other guy that stepped up and, they don't even have to pay as much, right? He's a young, undrafted, unproven guy, can fill that role. So not mad at that. James Robinson, who I felt played really well in the preseason. I think that he ran really well. He's a veteran. But when you look at how Jordan Mims was used, the fact that the Saints actually signed him and how much of a signing bonus he got, that's not a surprise there. Roderick Teamer, more of a depth guy. Joe John Williams kind of came on a little bit late. So I wasn't too surprised by some of these names, for the exception of Ugo Amadi and Jonathan Abram, who I feel probably are going to end up on the practice squad. Then you look at the next column. You got Kevin Austin, you got Mildred Bradford, Shaq Davis, Mark Evans II, Josiah Ezram, Mason Fairchild, Lou Hetley, Jack Heflin, Kyle Hergel. You also got Michael Jacobson, Shamar Jean Charles, Lawrence Johnson, Jacob Caboti, Nico Lalos, Mac McLean, and Samson Nakua. Couple names on this list that were a little bit of a shock to me. I'll start with Shamar Jean Charles. I think that he played really well in camp, took advantage of the opportunities when he was actually playing. Thought he did a really good job out there. Pretty solid performance. Thought that he would have done enough to make the team. But, of course, we know Rico Payton ended up making a 53-man roster. So if you had to look at and evaluate what guy did what in certain situations, I think you have to give credit to Rico and a notch to him in that regard. Also, looking at some of these other names, Mark Evans. Mark Evans is a guy who has been on and off the team over the last couple of years, coming out of the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Always going to have respect for him, a fellow SWAC guy myself. I'm always rooting for him, and I also had the opportunity to meet him in person, man. Seems like a very personable guy. Seems like a very confident kid. So I think that he'll probably end up, around his team in some capacity. I think the Saints like him. That's the reason why they keep bringing him back. Something that was maybe a little bit of a surprise to some, but not to me, was Lou Hetley being cut. I just think that he left a lot to be desired. I think that that punt that he had against the Tennessee Titans late in the fourth quarter kind of was the writing on the wall. That wasn't the first time we've seen Lou Hetley kind of fold under pressure. He's done that on several occasions in several games. And we know that the kicking game is extremely important. Field position is extremely important. And you can't be playing around with, to me, a little bit of I don't even know what to call him. I won't call him a act. I just think that maybe they fell in love with his background. He seemed like a pretty interesting individual, owning his own tattoo shop, tattoos from head to toe. He seemed like an interesting individual, but we're not we're not creating a reality TV show here, right? This is football, and you need a punter that's going to flip the field and give you really good field position for your defense to work. So I wasn't surprised, man. Lou Hetley to me is not a NFL caliber punter. I honestly feel like this is probably his last chance. He'll probably end up, playing football somewhere else, but I just have not been impressed. I think the biggest mistake that the New Orleans Saints made was getting rid of Blake Gillikin and keeping him around. And I don't understand why. I don't know if it was because maybe Dennis Allen wanted to set the tone. Maybe, he wanted to start with special teams, something light. That's the reason why he decided to go with Blake Groupie instead of Will Lutz and get rid of Blake Gillikin for Lou Hetley. I don't know, but it was a huge mistake. And in some cases, it actually cost the Saints games because the defense, wasn't able to, hold these teams back, set up field goals. And you need to be able to count on your defense and, for them to play the long game, the offense to play the long game going down the field, because you got a punter that can actually pin them back. And Lou Hetley did not do that. Michael Jacobson, I mean, man, I'm surprised it took this long. Honestly, the way he played in that game versus Tennessee, I would have cut him that night. I mean, back-to-back penalties. One penalty actually had the Saints in really good field position. It was called back. They had to kick it over again because of him, and then he has another holding call. So writing on the wall. Nico Lalos, yet again, finds himself on the waiver wire after preseason. I like this guy's motor. I think that he's a really good player. I just think that, it's such a crowded defensive line room. They couldn't really find a place for him, but wouldn't surprise me if he ends up on the practice squad also. Some of these other guys, I just think that, probably not going to end up making the team. Samson Nakua, I know he had that big return, but I don't know, man. I think you can get something a little bit better than him. Monty Rice, I'm looking at the next column. Mike Rose, Charlie Smith, and Isaiah Stallbird, excuse me. Monty Rice, I thought he showed a lot of heart. I think he showed a lot of passion. I think that, this is one of those guys, to me, probably would have made the squad if the Saints didn't keep around Isaiah Foskey. I like Rice. I think that he has something there. I think that the Saints like him. He took advantage of his opportunities. He was noticeable. It's unfortunate that you are playing around with a guy in Isaiah Foskey, in my opinion, it isn't going to end up being what you want him to be. Probably going to end up being one of those special team lifers the way he plays. Mike Rose, he's a tough guy, but, I think you can get a little bit more there. Charlie Smith, I'm thinking that the Saints are hoping that he actually clears waivers. I think they kind of hit him out in that game versus Tennessee. That was the second consecutive nationally televised game for the Saints. And, to me, that was one of the main reasons why I think they signed Rico Payton to the 53, because he played so well in front of a nationally televised audience. A lot of people saw that. And, if you had Charlie Smith out there kicking 65-yard field goals and he's a backup kicker, more than likely he won't clear waivers. So I'm thinking that the Saints are hoping that he does. They did enough to hide him out so he can come back and probably be one of those projects where they can actually develop him. And if Blake Grupe doesn't work out, then he can be the kicker for the foreseeable future. You got a couple guys that landed on injury reserve, Kendre Miller, Cameron Peterson. You also have Kevin Rader and Rejan Wright. Rejan Wright played pretty well throughout preseason, but, ended up on an injury reserve list. That just tells me that the Saints feel like there's something there. Kendre Miller, to me, is still a really good running back, but you got to be out there. You got to be available. This is a guy who is benefiting from being a draft pick. He's also benefiting from being a pretty solid running back. So hopefully he can come back after those 4 weeks and contribute in some capacity. I think that when Kendre Miller is healthy, when he is playing, I think that he can challenge any running back in that room. I think that he has some really good qualities about himself, but I think a lot of people don't know that because, of course, he spends more time in the tub than actually in the club. So hopefully he can get these injuries he can get his injury situation together and he can go out there and contribute to this team so people can know how special he is as a running back. Because right now people are starting to look at some of the other decisions the Saints could have made at running back because he's not available. And then you have Tano Pasio and Nephi Sewell on the PUP list. So those are your cuts. Those are your IR guys. And, that is, the Saints cuts. Of course, we know about some of these other guys. Congratulations. I mentioned Rico Payton. Congratulations to him, for making the team. I think that Rico Payton did a, really good job. I think he, made a case for himself. I think that he did a lot of really good things. And, that's the way it should be. A guy goes out there, he works hard, he dedicates himself, he grinds. And, of course, he finds himself on a 53-man roster. It shouldn't be one of those situations where just because a guy got drafted at a certain spot, just because a guy, you don't want to be looked at. I'm talking to organization, don't want to be looked at as an organization that, I made a mistake. You keeping guys around. So I think that Rico Payton made a case for himself. In my opinion, he probably didn't have any business making this team, based on who was available, who was there, what the Saints expected out of certain players. So this is a pleasant surprise. And this is just a testament to the New Orleans Saints developmental process defensively. You can say whatever you want to say about Dennis Allen as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, as a defensive mind, he does a really good job at developing some of these young players and putting them in a position to succeed. And some of these guys don't come in, with a lot of fanfare. You got to use Wikipedia to know who some of these guys are. Some cases that's a bad thing, but for the most part, when it comes to the secondary, they can find those diamonds in the rough, and they do a really good job at developing these players. And if you can get some guys inside of this locker room in your secondary in a pass-happy NFL, I think that you have a recipe for success. You got a lot of talent in the NFC South at the wide receiver position. We know that the cornerback position is one of those positions you can never have too many guys that are upright and that are capable of playing both inside and out. So I think that this is a plus for the New Orleans Saints, and congratulations to Rico Payton. Also, congratulations to Anthony Orji, a guy who had a lunch pail mentality, showed promise last season, and actually just doubled down on some of the things that he did well. He improved, and he found himself on a 53-man roster. Christian Boyd, a late-round draft pick for the New Orleans Saints, he also made the squad as well. I mean, I don't think that it's over when it comes to the Saints trying to figure out maybe what other teams have released, maybe a little bit better than what they actually have. If you can find someone on the offensive line that can actually come in, that can provide something as far as depth, or maybe even challenge one of these starters at the left guard or right tackle position. If you can bring somebody like that in, that's a plus. If you could actually bring in another wide receiver. I mean, we know Terrence Marshall is out on the street. Noah Brown is out on the street. Donovan Peoples-Jones is out on the street. Kadarius Toney is out on the street, whether you like him or not. I mean, he's on the street. I mean, you got some guys out there that can make some plays and got a little, athleticism about themselves. So all in all, I like what the Saints did. I think that this team went from being one of the oldest teams in the league to one of the youngest, especially across the defensive, line. And now all you really have as far as seasoned veterans and guys that are kind of north of 30. You got Cam Jordan, you got Tyrann Mathieu, you got Demario Davis. All these other guys are relatively young. So that narrative that people are running with about the New Orleans Saints not, being a young team and they got a bunch of old guys, I mean, you got to take a look. I mean, yeah, you got Derek Carr, he's in his 30s, and Alvin Kamara is 29 years old, but you also have some really young, talented guys at the wide receiver position. You got some young guys at the running back position, if you count Kendre Miller when he's healthy. So I think the Saints have set themselves up to be a young football team. And if you can actually develop these guys, a lot of these individuals are on, rookie deals, undrafted deals. If you can develop these guys into what you need them to be, you can actually go into 2025 competing to win the division, to maybe possibly make a run at a Super Bowl. So if the Saints can actually, just kind of keep this thing afloat, who knows what can possibly happen in 2025. I'm looking at the next year. I think the Saints this year, we just have to look at them to be competitive, try to win as many games as you possibly can and let the chips fall where they may. But I'm looking for the Saints to really seriously make a run in 2025 when we figure out what they actually have. And, will they make the commitment to Dennis Allen? Will he do enough in 2024 to keep his job? Will they realize that maybe, Derek Carr isn't the answer? Will Derek Carr change their mind? So I'm looking at 2025. I'm looking at 2024 more as a competitive year. I still think the Saints have a really strong chance of winning this division, despite what people may think. I think that a lot of people aren't giving the Saints credit for the moves that they made in the offseason, the improvements with the coordinator. Yeah, you got some questions on the offensive line, but I do think that the offense that Clint Kubiak is bringing, I think that it kind of, makes up for some of the imperfections of your offense, some of the imperfections of your offensive line, some of the imperfections of the quarterback play. And you combine the fact that the Saints always have a top 10 defense more times than not, I think it's going to be extremely competitive. They're going to be extremely competitive in 2024. And I don't think any team is just going to blow them out. I would be shocked if that is the case more times than not. I just think that, putting the Saints out there, DOA, I just think that's a huge mistake. And if you underestimate this football team, they will embarrass you. They have the talent to do so. But I want to thank everybody for being here. 231 people watching this right now. I ask that you hit the like button. With that, I'm going to go ahead and read some of your comments. I really do appreciate you all for being here. I'll start with Paul. Paul says, Saints hold on to players that are on their last leg for too long and let some promising players go. Yeah, I agree with that, Paul. But I think that the Saints are trying to install like the first wave of this youth movement that they have going on. I mentioned like you got some young players along the defensive line. You got Chase Young, 24 years old, Carl Granderson, 27. I think Brian Brzee is 22 years old. You got Pete Warner, who's 25. You got some of these other young guys, Paulson Adebo, he's 24. Lattimore's 28. I mean, you got some young guys out there. You got your veterans, like I said, the DeMarios and the Cams and the Tyrants. But I think that this team is starting to get a little bit younger again. And if you can actually develop these guys, then you can have something very, very special. So it looked like the Saints are trying to use what they got to generate some levels of success. I stand by my statement that I made. I feel like the New Orleans Saints aren't really sold on Dennis Allen fully. I don't think they're praying for his downfall or anything like that. But I think the Saints have a cause to pause with some of these decisions, like, over exhausting the salary cap. I think that they're trying to make themselves, formidable and compelling and intriguing, just in case the Dennis Allen experience doesn't work out and you have to go in a different direction. But they also gave Dennis Allen enough ingredients to cook a decent meal here. Right. So it's not like you're playing in the AFC North. It's not like you're playing in some of these divisions that, that they basically just beat up on one another and, they're fighting for a number one seed. This is a division that hasn't been very good over the last couple of years. And every team is trying to find a way to jock for position. But even with that, everybody's pretty much neck and neck. A decision that you make in the offseason could determine if you actually win a division, maybe by a game or two. So that's what I see from the New Orleans Saints. I want John Mechie. I wouldn't mind John Mechie at all, but I haven't heard anything about him being released. I haven't heard anything about him being waived. So I assume that he's going to be on the 53-man roster of the Houston Texans. But it would have been great if he actually got waived. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he did upon the making of this video. I haven't been on, X or anything like that to see if they actually waived him or not. But I don't think they did. But, I wouldn't mind having a guy like that if he was available. Dez Bryant on the streets if you want trash. Man, that's not disrespect Dez Bryant like that. Dez Bryant was a solid wide receiver during his time. And, some health issues that he had, kind of, slowing him down a little bit. So, I mean, he had his moments. When he was in his prime, he was a dog. I'm not going to take that away from him. But, yeah. These Falcon fans are loud right now. Watch them dwindle down as the season progresses. Yeah, I just think that there's nothing wrong with being optimistic about your football team. I don't have an issue with that at all. I just feel like the fact that they just think that the Saints are just going to just go into obscurity. The fact that Carolina is just going to be an absolute train wreck and winning 2 games again, or Tampa is just going to fall back down to earth. It's just wishful thinking. I said this on the NFC South Roundtable. I don't see that much of a separation. I don't see what they see. I just don't. I mean, I like Kirk Cousins. I think he's decent, but he hasn't won anything. And you can make an argument that some of the same things that have plagued Derek Carr has plagued Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has a reputation of not being able to win big-time football games. Does that sound familiar? Kirk Cousins, comes from an organization that gave up on him, basically told him that they're going in a different direction. They're going to draft a quarterback if they have one available. Does that sound familiar? So all I'm saying is, like, for people to say that, we're going to win a division, we're going to be on top. Like, I just think that I get it, because everybody's picking them and they see the names and they see all these guys. And honestly, from a cultural standpoint, I mean, we know that Atlanta, is a predominantly African-American town. So when you have an African-American GM, that gets you excited. When you have an African-American coach, that gets them excited. I don't mean to put a color thing on it, but that's just the reality, folks. Like that, there's a level of excitement about that because of these situations. And then you have a, African-American quarterback that's waiting in the wings, right? That's how they feel. So I can understand the excitement, but to think that the Saints are just going to just go away. One thing you can say about the Saints, over the last couple of years, at least. You know, they fell short, but at least they put something out there that's remotely competitive. It's not like we just go into games like the Saints about to just get steamrolled every single week. And, you know, I just think that the Saints' biggest issues are the mistakes that the mistakes that they make is their unwillingness to embrace the future. They try to hold on to things too long. They try to make things work that aren't working. And sometimes I just feel like they just are a little bit spiteful when it comes to their decision making. Maybe it's because everybody expects for them to do something. They do the complete opposite. But sometimes it's okay for people to know what you're going to do as long as what you're doing works. So I don't think the Saints are just going to fall off. I think the Saints are going to be competitive. I think the Saints are going to win some football games that they shouldn't. And, you know, I don't think this division is just, you know, a division full of world beaters here. So feel sorry for Jake and Spencer. They will never get on the field. Well, look, I ain't got no problem with neither one of them being on the field. Like, I don't think neither one of them are ready for prime time just yet. I feel like both of them need to develop and figure things out and how to be pros. You know, I think that they both have some really good qualities about themselves, but I just think that based on, you know, some of the issues and some of the unanswered questions that are surrounding this football team, I wouldn't want to put these guys out here, man. I mean, we don't know what the future of this head coach is. We don't know the future of this quarterback. So I don't want to put these guys out here. And I also know that some of these Saints fans don't have a level of understanding that if you have a young quarterback out there, you know, everybody's not going to look like Patrick Mahomes. So if they come out there struggling, I just don't think that some of these members in this fan base have the understanding of the football knowledge to understand that sometimes these young quarterbacks go through growing pains. And I don't want to put them out there. I do not want to put them out there in this situation. Like, this is something that they feel is necessary. Having Derek Carr, bringing them over from the Raiders, they feel like that was the answer to their problems. You know, hiring Clint Kubiak, they feel like that's the answer offensively. And they feel like what they had on the defensive side of football last year, for the most part, could work this year, along with Dennis Allen, who is a defensive mind. So I say let them go ahead and figure this thing out. And if it doesn't work out, whoever is the next head coach, hopefully they can come back in and, you know, come into this organization, and you'll have a young quarterback duo here that can do some really good things. And maybe that coach can put them in the right position to succeed. But right now, I do not want to see these guys on the field. Let's see how you feel about them keeping Mason Tipton. Didn't really see anything other than practice, in my opinion. It rhymes. This kind of resembles that of a Rashid Shaheed. This kind of resembles that of a Deontay Hardy, where you have a guy that is really talented, that you really like, and you don't want to really show what he can do. I think that the Saints didn't try to rush him back because they probably seen enough of what he's capable of. They probably already have a plan for him. I expect for him to contribute as that return guy, because I just think that now Rashid Shaheed is that number 2 receiver. So you're not looking for him to be that special teams guy anymore, and you need somebody to be able to carry that load. I think they like him. And I think that, you know, they've been hiding him out for a while. I feel very, very strongly about it. I think that's one of the main reasons. You know, I think that the Saints felt if they put him out there, maybe, you know, he will show what he can do and they'll end up losing out on him. But the fact that he's a mystery and they like him and they feel like he can bring something to the table, this might be beneficial to the New Orleans Saints. So maybe this was one of those situations where the Saints were playing chess and not checkers. Let's see. Rise up to fall down. Yeah, man, look, I just feel like that's just, you know, wishful thinking if they, you know, think they just going to run through this division. I just do. I don't think that the Saints are just going to be that god awful. Like, I don't. You know, they're still a competitive football team, and they got a lot of guys with a lot of pride on this football team. And, you know, you got some veteran leadership that is not going to let this team just fall by the wayside. Like, they're going to challenge these young players. They're going to lead by example. And when you have that type of talent, especially on each level of the football defensively, and you also got some veterans offensively, I just think that, you know, this team isn't just going to, give up and quit. And I just think that if they do, then that's a clear indication that you need to get rid of Dennis Allen, because this is a team that has that reputation based on the leadership. They don't have that reputation of quitting. So when you start seeing signs like that, it's probably best to cut your losses with the head coach. Let's see. Yeah, and defensive minded, he's good, but head coach, he's bad. So at the end of the day, if you a bad head coach, that cancels out other good traits like it's not rocket science. Sean was good offensive mind and good head coach. Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, like, I just think, no cap, I understand how you feel about Dennis Allen, but to think that this defense will not fall off or take steps back because he won't be here, I just think that, I think you might be lying to yourself in that regard. Like, this dude is a really good head coach, not really good head coach, really good defensive-minded coach, really good coordinator. And I would just hate to see where this team would actually be with the offensive struggles that they had over the last couple of years. Where would they be if they didn't have a solid defense? And this is one of those situations, I'm telling you, like, we talking about it now. It's the kind of the same situation with Drew Brees. Everybody was, talking about he ain't got the arm strength no more, calling them noodle arms, saying that, the offense is sputtering. And, people like, man, maybe the Saints need to go in a different direction. Drew Brees has been retired for going on 4 seasons now, and the Saints still haven't found anybody that can match anything that he does, right? I mean, he's still they've had a revolving door of quarterbacks over the last few years. So you don't always miss a good thing until it's gone. Yes, he leaves a lot to be desired as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, you don't have many coordinators in the National Football League that are better than Dennis Allen. So at least while you're figuring out this offensive situation, at least you're going to have a defense that is going to be the catalyst for this team. If he leaves, I don't know who you're going to be able to find to be able to do some of those things. Of course, you can find a solid defensive coordinator or even a really good one. But, teams struggle, man. Like, they have some really good coordinators out here, but they lack in certain areas. One thing about Dennis Allen, you're going to have yourself a good defense. So I can understand why the Saints want this thing to work, because he's so good at, calling defensive games. He's good at it. He's top 5. If you think about it, not too many coordinators are better than Dennis Allen in the National Football League. So I can understand why the Saints are trying to make this thing work. To me, if you were to put them on a polygraph test and ask them, would you have rather kept him as a coordinator than a head coach? I guarantee you, if they was to say, no, we rather have him as a head coach, they probably would fail that polygraph test. They wish they probably would have kept him as a coordinator. And it's probably, I feel like if they did, then the Saints would have probably won this division for the last couple of years. I just think that it's levels to this. I think that, it's levels to being a head coach, versus being a defensive coordinator. So I think the Saints, kind of set themselves back by giving him this opportunity. I feel like if they would have kept him around as a defensive coordinator, maybe hired another offensive-minded guy as a head coach, then I think the Saints probably would have been flirting with divisional round, NFC championship. So I think that, if Dennis Allen was to lead the New Orleans Saints, you'll probably see a little bit of a step back, from, what the defense once was. So I'm not gonna hate on them in that regard. Like, I would hate to see what this defense would look like, or this team would look like, if they didn't have that defense that he was actually, coaching. TJ, I think that the offensive line will be a liability this season. I think a lot of people feel that way, Paul, and I understand that, the reason why. But once again, I just think that this wide zone offense kind of hides and masquerades some of the imperfections of your offensive line. I think that's the reason why, you're trying to get athletic on the offensive line. It kind of hides the imperfections of a Trevor Penny, hide the imperfections of that of a Lucas Patrick. But at the same time, if I'm the New Orleans Saints, I'm still burning the midnight oil, trying to figure out what I need to do across this offensive line. I just think that you have a quarterback who has happy feet, who becomes erratic when anything is around him, when it resembles pressure. I just think that, he starts to make mistakes because, he has that clock in the back of his head, but I think it starts to speed up a little bit. He his foot discipline just kind of goes away from him, and he starts to like check it down and, not really looking for the big play or the receiver down the field. So I just think that you need to find offensive line, collection that can actually make him feel a little bit comfortable. If you don't, then I just think that you're probably going to struggle as an offense because, he gets happy feet. So I don't know. If I'm the Saints, then I'm making phone calls. I'm not taking this line down. I'm not content with the offensive line that I have selected as my final 53. I'm looking at some of these teams that probably had a lot of depth at the offensive line, so they let a solid offensive lineman go. I'm making phone calls trying to see if I can actually make a trade. But if you don't, then, I can understand that too because, like I said, the Saints gave Dennis Allen just enough in order for him to prove that he can possibly lead this team somewhere, but not enough for you to actually feel like they're going to win something of significance. And I just think that this is more of a prove-it year for Dennis Allen. So because it's a prove-it year for Dennis Allen, you're not going to go out here and try to make these big-time trades. You're not trying to sign this highly touted free agent, right? Because you don't know if the next coach comes in. You want your salary cap to be, something, somewhat reasonable and somewhat compelling enough for them to feel like they can actually take on the challenge of being the Saints' next head coach. So, but yeah, I can understand why you are concerned about this offensive line. What the NFL needs to do is partner with the UFL as a developmental league, and each NFL team has their own D league and help players that need extra coaches like coaching like Trevor Penning or new quarterbacks equals more snaps. Yeah, Dark Side. I mean, in a perfect world, that makes sense. If it was 1980, that would make perfect sense. But we know the world that we live in. The world that we live in a microwavable world. We want instant gratification. We want splash. We want guys that represent change. Like, doesn't matter if they are the guy or not, right? Every year we sit in front of our television sets or we go to these events. We go to the NFL draft, and our favorite team drafts a guy, and we look at that guy as the hope of the future. And he may not be everything that we want him to be, but it's the symbolism of what he is. And I just think that fan bases, teams are impatient. This is entertainment also at the end of the day. So if you can bring a guy in who probably has some really good arm talent, but, he has questionable quarterback skills, like a Anthony Richardson, for example, but he can run and he's a big physical guy. He can generate some levels of excitement, get people on their feet. Guess what? They're going to put him out there. And you probably have a quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and from what I've seen in preseason, he still has to develop. But at the same time, like, he still generates a level of success that people want to see. So it's not like how it used to be in the 80s and the 90s where you had a quarterback that you drafted and he'll sit behind the starting quarterback for 3 or 4 years, and then after that, he's ready to play. It's not like that anymore. Fan bases clamor for that next franchise quarterback. They clamor for that next franchise running back, that next cornerback, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think that the impatience of society right now prohibits that type of practice from happening, Dark Side. I agree with what you're saying. I think it will make perfect sense. I do feel like, the NFL should have a developmental league. We see it in baseball. We see it in basketball. We see it in other sports. I don't understand why the NFL doesn't do it. To a certain extent, I do. It's one of the most exciting. It is the most exciting sport in all of America. And once again, people look at these draft picks as symbols of change, symbols of endless possibilities. So when you have that, it's hard to say, oh man, we're gonna bring this dude down here to the UFL to develop. I ain't trying to hear that. Let's just say, for example, Spencer Rattler was a first-round draft pick, and people are saying that at that time he can actually be the franchise quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, like for real, like like a lot of people saying this, and the Saints be like, well, we're gonna send them down to, I don't know, we're gonna send them down to Lafayette, Louisiana, and develop with the Lafayette crawfish daddies or something. Like, ain't nobody trying to hear that. You'll probably get a nice little attendance at the crawfish daddy games, but people want to see these quarterbacks, rather they standing on the sidelines, like looking at them, or the fact that they can actually go up in there, and if the starting quarterback that they aren't very high on is playing like trash, they can boo and chant this guy's name. I mean, it's entertainment at the end of the day, folks. You got to understand that too. It's a sport, but it's also entertainment at the end of the day as well. Let's see. Derek says, I've seen the Saints defense at its worst. Y'all definitely don't want to see that again. Yeah, I think a lot of people, they see this team and have seen this team from a light of, prosperity, a light where they really haven't seen too many hardships for this team. They may have lacked in certain things, but they compensated because of certain things. The defense was trash throughout the 2000, like from 2010 to 2016, but it was kind of compensated because Drew Brees was just so good at the quarterback position. So it just gave you reasons to go to the games and cheer for Drew Brees and cheer for the offense. But, back in the day when I was growing up as a kid in the 90s, the Saints weren't very good defensively or offensively. And, I just think that a lot of people, the state of the Saints, no pun intended, the way that it is right now, you have some fans that aren't used to this. But I can tell you it can get a lot worse. And some of us in this chat that's been riding with the Saints for a long time, around my age, I'm 38, they know that the Saints were terrible and a lot worse. And how we're talking about Dennis Allen and we're talking about quarterback and all that. I mean, add on the offensive line, add on the running back, add on the defensive line, add on the linebacker, add on the secondary. I mean, as a staff, organization, and crew, need to throw the whole thing away. That's how we grew up. But a lot of you, I can understand why you feel the way you do, why you feel like the sky is falling, why you feel like it's the stock market crash in 1929, because you never really experienced this level of hardship before. And if you did, you were probably too young to remember. You probably was crawling under your grandmother's table, your mama table, in the living room while the Saints was actually playing, getting the brakes beat off of them by the Atlanta Falcons or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But, some of us that been in a game for a minute, we seen the highs and the lows, but you also got to be able to have a little bit of patience when it comes to the football team too, because this is a transitional phase that they're going through. They're going to have to figure it out. I think that Drew Brees and Sean Payton kind of compensated for a lot of the imperfections of this team. And I think that they're starting to rear their ugly head right now, that a lot of the guys that we thought knew what the hell they were doing, they didn't. And now we're trying to figure out who actually knows what they're doing. And if they don't, then we need to go in a different direction. Jack says, TJ, did you get a contract with the Saints? You drinking a Kool-Aid? Absolutely not. I don't know what you're talking about. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm about as, frank as, Caliendo. You know what I'm saying? Like I keep it 100. I'll just tell you based on what I see. I don't follow hot takes. I don't follow what other people say. Hell, no disrespect to anybody else. But before I even start doing this podcast, I don't listen to anybody because I don't want their opinions of the team to roll into mine. What I'm saying is I'm looking at the state of this NFC South, and to think that the New Orleans Saints are just going to fall under and just crash. Why? Because, everybody else is saying it. Why? Because we want it to be true. Like, regardless, like you can hate Dennis Allen all you want to. First year he went 7-10, and they went 9-8 last year. And we said that the biggest issue was the fact that Pete Carmichael was the offensive coordinator. They tried to improve that offense, right? They're trying to put more emphasis on the running game. They're taking the ball out of the hands of Derek Carr, which should be appeasing to a lot of us. So to say that the New Orleans Saints don't have a chance in NFC South and just all hope is lost, I just think that you're just falling for the narrative that some people are saying. I'm not saying that the New Orleans Saints are just going to be world beaters, but to say that the New Orleans Saints aren't capable of beating some of these top teams in the league or, being competitive, or it can come down to a field goal because of the defense, I just think that, you're sadly mistaken. I'm not saying that they're going to go out here and just wreck shop, but it's not like the NFC just is. It has a plethora, a bunch of talented football teams. I mean, for the most part, the NFC, they don't really have too many quality quarterbacks. Now, if the Saints were in the AFC, then I probably would be singing some of these songs that some of y'all are singing. Like, man, because the quarterback play in the AFC is a completely different beast than that in the NFC. But to say that, oh, man, the Saints going to win 3 games or 4 games, like, I just think that's insane. Like, it would have to take, like, a total collapse. Like, it would have to be like, man, these guys, like, man, I don't believe in this dude at all. I'm talking Dennis. Like, man, look, man, we got to get this dude up out of here. It would have to take something like that for this team to straight fall under. And to be quite honest with you, if the Saints start getting blown out, then I feel like that's when you need to get rid of Dennis Allen. Because, like I said, this is a team that is very, very prideful. They have a really good, solid locker room, and they have leaders who are, looked at as not just leaders in the Saints locker room, but faces of the NFL, like Cam Jordan and Demario Davis. These guys are well respected. Tyrann Mathieu. So if these guys aren't, talking to these young guys and their words are not registering, I think that it's time to move on. But I'm not going to sit up here and just say like the Saints are just going to look like just absolute trash. I think they're going to be competitive. I think they're going to be competitive in games. And, if you have a good defense, I don't care what y'all say. I know some of y'all are more of that modern NFL where, if you ain't throwing 60-yard bombs down the field. But if you have a good defense, you can win football games. You can find yourself in positions that you don't need to be in. So, I mean, I'm not saying that, once again, I'm not saying that they're going to wreck shop and, and just dominate. But to say like they just going to sit out here and just get steamrolled by every team that they come across, I just feel like you just listening too hard at some of these hot takes that people are saying. I can understand people's lack of confidence in a coach and quarterback, but I just can't see this team just basically just giving up and quitting, not with what they have inside of that locker room. Those guys, like we can say whatever we want, but I don't think that is I don't think it's a false sense of reality. When they say that, they don't feel that way. We may feel that way, like it's a false sense of reality that they feel like they could actually win this division. But I really feel like when Tyrann Mathieu is tweeting, when Cam Jordan is tweeting, Demario Davis is tweeting, and they say like, man, we got a chance. I think those guys really feel like they have a chance. And then until they're proven otherwise, they're going to feel that way. So I just can't fall into that category like the Saints are just going to be a 1, 2, or 3 win team. I just can't. I just can't until it actually happens. And if it does, then y'all know how I roll. I will sit up here and eat crow, but I just don't see them just being slapped around week after week after week, like some people are making it seem like. I grew up during Bobby Hebert and Mort Anderson days. Yeah, those were the highs and lows right there. Lalo should have had Foskey sad ass spot. Isaiah Foskey's being on a 53-man roster is just a prime example of teams not willing to cut their losses. They should have cut their losses with him, but that's just my opinion. Some people like, oh, give him time. Like, his issue has nothing to do with his skill set. It has everything to do in between the ears and his toughness and his physicality. If you don't have, look, football is a game of intensity. You got to have a certain level of intensity. You got to have a certain level of dog inside of you. If you don't have that, then why are you even playing? I think the problem is this struggle is unnecessary. They could have avoided a few of these problems. Yeah, I agree with that, man. I said this before on the podcast. Like, you had opportunities to find that succession plan for Drew Brees, being able to kind of just turn the page and be willing to embrace the future. And, I just think they kind of set themselves back, Shazam, because they refused to embrace the future because they felt like they were close. And all you had to do was just hire somebody that wouldn't crash the car. No pun intended. Right. But you hired Dennis Allen because you were afraid to embrace the future. You were afraid to go out here and try to find somebody else with different philosophies and ideas. Right. You try to prolong this process. But look where you are right now. You basically have to completely do an overhaul of your defensive staff and offensive staff. So you basically had to face your own, inevitability there. It was inevitable that this happened. It had to happen. So you were forced to do that. So if they would have just hired a head coach, an offensive-minded coach, or a coach that was, I don't know, has a reputation of being a leader of men, and you had Dennis Allen as your defensive coordinator, then I think the Saints would have been a lot further than what they actually are right now. But right now they're playing catch-up, and, you got a coach that's trying to figure it out. And I don't know, man. I don't know about him. Glad to catch a live show. Let's not bring up all those bad defensive signings, Jason David, Brandon Brown, Jarius Byrd, and old Champ Bailey. Yeah, man, I mean, the defense was pretty bad during that time. A lot of people may not remember that, but hey, it's been pretty bad. Dallas game will be won by Saints. Remember this comment. Look, I just think that Dallas has a really good defense. They have a really good offense, right? But I just think that, you know, the Saints match up well versus Dallas. They match up well versus Dallas. So because Dallas likes to throw the football, I think the Saints across the board have a really solid secondary. You have somebody that can actually hold down CeeDee Lamb. You got somebody that can actually hold down Brandon Cooks. You know, the middle of the field, you got somebody like in Willie Gay and Pete Warner that can actually do something with Ferguson. You know, you're going to have to you got to go into that game, even if it's not the case. You got to go into that game looking to possibly score north of 30 in that game. Can the Saints do it? I don't know. But you got to be prepared to do so, you know. But I think they can do some things to kind of rattle Dak Prescott. TJ, I'm ready. TJ, I'm ready for the this season. We was tied for first place. Can't wait to see what place will be. Tyrone, look, I appreciate that. Like I say, you play to win the games. You gotta play to win the games. Nobody knows what this season going to look like. We have an idea about who's going to be good, who's going to be bad, but we don't know that until these guys actually play. Now, we can make these predictions and all that kind of stuff, and some of us are going to make these predictions pretty early, and it might work in our favor, and we're going to say, see, I told you so. I told you this was going to happen, but we don't know for real, right? I mean, all of us are basically just kind of spitballing this thing and thinking that we feel like how this season is going to look, but I mean, we don't know until they actually play the games, and I just think that I think it's going to be a very interesting season across the NFC South. TJ, do you think Garrett Wilson better than Olave? They put up identical numbers, but Wilson seems to be praised and Olave gets no coverage. Sydney, there's a reason because that happens. There's a reason why that happens. The reason why that happens is one of them plays in a big market like New York, and one of them plays in a smaller market in New Orleans. Guy plays with arguably the greatest quarterback of our generation in Aaron Rodgers, and the other plays with a quarterback that a lot of people look at as underachiever. That's just the reality of the thing. New York is always going to get the bright lights, the benefit of the doubt, and they're going to get the coverage that's rolled out for them like a red carpet at the Oscars. I mean, I don't think there's a separation in between them. For the exception, I feel like Garrett Wilson is a little bit more of a dog than Chris Olave is. But that's just my opinion. I feel like that's the only thing that kind of separates them. I think Garrett Wilson has that number one wide receiver type mentality, and I feel like Chris Olave is the number one receiver because he's polished. But if the Saints were to go out here and get another guy that resembles a number one receiver with a little bit more of a Garrett Wilson type mentality, I think that Chris Olave would embrace that. I think that he'll be okay with that. I think he'll be like, okay, man, that's fine. I'm going to get my touches. I'm going to get my touchdowns, but I don't feel like he'll be that upset like Garrett Wilson will if the Jets were to go out here and get an A.J. Brown caliber type wide receiver to go alongside him. He'll probably take exception to that. I don't feel bad about saying that because I'm going to continue to beat this home. Look, I like Chris Olave. I understand what he was doing when he said this, but when he was in the locker room, he was talking to the media and they was asking him about Rashid Shaheed. He was like, I'm a 1 and he's more like a 1A. I mean, to me, if you're that dog, you're that guy, you can be happy for your boy. I understand that San Diego connection that they have, both of them kind of like from that area, but I can't see any, guy that looks at himself like a number one, like having somebody else comparing him and saying he's a 1A. I never heard, as much as Michael Thomas used to praise Chris Olave, I never seen him say and call Chris Olave a 1A, right? I just think that that's kind of like a passive approach. Not to say that he's not a number one receiver, but I just feel like this is a Brandon Cooks type situation. I look at Chris Olave like a more polished Brandon Cooks. When Brandon Cooks was the top guy, he was the top guy. He got 1,000 yards. He was the go-to guy for Drew Brees. But then when Michael Thomas came, what did the Saints do? They ended up trading Brandon Cooks. And it wasn't because Brandon Cooks wasn't good. He was good. But Mike had that dog mentality. Mike out here breaking fingers You know, when I think Sean Payton told that story about him trying to jam Michael Thomas, and Michael Thomas took his hand and just pushed it, like he felt like he dislocated his shoulder. He dislocated his finger. Like, that dude was a dog, man. Like there was a vibe. You knew. Like, you can talk about Michael Thomas all day. Some people kind of fell off the Michael Thomas train due to the social media stuff. But one thing you can't say about him, he was a dog. He was a number one guy. And he carried himself like that. So I think the separation between Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave is the mind frame. Like, I think if Garrett Wilson would have got drafted by the Saints, I think that their stat line would have been the same. But I think that you probably would have seen like a little bit more yards after the catch. I think you would have seen a little bit more intensity at that wide receiver position. But like I said, I'm not hating on Chris Olave. I think he is a number one guy. He has number one qualities. But if somebody else was to come in that has a little bit of size, real, like talent, like freakish athlete with a dog mentality, I think he'll, I don't think he'll, have any blowback or pushback because of take exception to it. That's one of the issues I have with him. I mean, hopefully one day he proves me wrong, but that's just the way I feel. Remember, half of these players get injured in the first 4 weeks. Prepare your mind for that. Yeah, I mean, injury is going to happen. And that's one thing you got to take into consideration too. Saints defense ranked number 4 last year. Let's see, get off DA's back. I assume that's what you're saying. Let's see. Jerry G, my bad. I'm driving, don't see it. Let's see. So it's after game 1 and 4. That's that's you kind of see what is really going to happen. Well, you're saying if they start the season 1 and 4, what would have happened? I mean, if they start the season 1 and 4, then yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think some changes probably going to end up being made if that's the case. If Kamara and the run game gets off to a good start, yeah, if they get off to a good start, I think the Saints will be okay. TJ, is Laddie Daddy playing in the first game? I think he is. Man, I think a lot of these guys got held out because, they probably had like some soft tissue injuries and all that kind of stuff, but the Saints wanted them to like hit the ground running. I think that, when you become a veteran, you kind of know what a guy is. Like, you don't have to go out there and play Demario Davis every game. Like, what Demario Davis is going to be when he plays. And I think that, when it comes to Paulson Adebo and the Lattimore's, like, you kind of know what these guys are. And if, they got some things that's bothering them, they're going to be prepared and ready. I also look at it kind of like two ways here. Like, you got players that actually see how you approach this. They see it, right? If you're being too passive aggressive, it might rub players the wrong way. Like this whole conversation now, like you kept all 3 quarterbacks. You got Carr, you got Rattler, and you got Hayner. But I think Dennis Allen is talking about, like, I'm gonna let this thing play out, the competition going into the season. Like, that's kind of a passive aggressive approach, and I think that has been the issue with the New Orleans Saints for a while. The fact that they've been super passive aggressive when it comes to decision making, because he doesn't want to make that tough decision, because he seems like he doesn't want to upset somebody or offend somebody or make somebody feel some type of way. Look, if you're going to apologize to your bitter rival, the Falcons, you're going to apologize to a coach that got fired less than 24 hours after that game, and you're up here, pouring your heart out, apologizing to the guy. Like, come on, man. Like, he's too, like, that passive aggressive approach is going to end up biting him. Like, if anything, that's probably going to end up like being his demise. Like I like some of the things that they actually did, making their practice more physical, having more practices with more that were more physical, making sure that you have the helmets and the shells on, and the pads, more padded practices. I think you did some really good things there, and all that stuff don't matter if you're going to be passive aggressive anyway. All right. That just seemed like you just kind of, playing a part than actually being a part. I'm gonna read a few more, and then we're gonna go ahead and get up out of here. It says TJ, I see Terrence Marshall got released from the Panthers, and Kadarius Toney from the Chiefs. Would that be a decent addition or a hard pass? Look, DA, I'm gonna say this. If I was to say that Terrence Marshall would be a good addition to the Saints, it would just be the simple fact that he went to LSU and we like LSU guys. He's done absolutely nothing since he's been in the league. He's a second-round pick that has played with a team that has desperately need a wide receiver, and it's not like he didn't have an opportunity to be able to step up because, after DJ Moore left, there was a huge void. But instead of Terrence Marshall being that guy, they were relying on a 30-plus-year-old Adam Thielen, who still has a little bit left in the tank. That should have been Terrence Marshall out there balling, right? That should have been him out there balling, along with some of these other young guys that are out there. But he couldn't take a stranglehold of that position. So if you can't take a stranglehold of a position when there's really no competition out there for you, then who's to say that if you come to the New Orleans Saints, like, you just going to play so much better? I just don't believe that. So I would just be saying bring back Terrence Marshall because he is Terrence Marshall and he went to LSU. As far as Kadarius Toney, like, the only thing that's intriguing to me about Kadarius Toney is his ability to get yard after the catch. Like, he's extremely elusive. He's fast. He has that speed. I think he can kind of work, in an offense like that. But my biggest concern is you played for a team that had the best quarterback in the league, and you have the best head coach in football in Andy Reid, and you still couldn't get the job done. So that to me is a flagrant foul. And if you can't get it done with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, what the hell, do you think he's going to do with Clint Kubiak? No disrespect to Clint, but he is not on the level of an Andy Reid. And you don't have a Patrick Mahomes inside of your locker room right now. So if you can't do it with them, then that's an indictment, a huge indictment. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is huge. Like, it don't get no better than that. You don't get a better situation than Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So, but yeah, but as far as, like, if you're looking for yards after the catch, maybe, have a play or two where he can actually, stretch the field, make somebody miss. Yeah, but I don't know. Cabody is a young Le'Veon Bell to me. Yeah, I think the guy's talented. Might end up on the practice squad. He is protecting Derek Carr's feelings. I agree. He probably is protecting Derek Carr's feelings, but I mean, he is the franchise quarterback, and I'm pretty sure that's what they've been doing, and I don't know, man. I think the New Orleans Saints, some of the, people within the organization probably didn't like the popularity of a Jameis Winston over Derek Carr. I don't know why you would draft a guy like Spencer Rattler with that type of upside if you're trying to appease Derek Carr. It's even worse now because now you got a young guy who hasn't really played a meaningful NFL snap in a regular season game. I mean, now it's even worse. So I don't know. I don't know how much you're protecting them, but at least they're not crazy. And, skip past a guy like, Spencer Rattler because you're trying to save this guy feelings. And, he hasn't proved that he is, the future in the future plans of the New Orleans Saints. Get Toney for special teams punt return. He is extremely athletic and did that return in the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, the Clint Kubiak offense is set up for wide receivers to be able to get yards after the catch. Kadarius Toney can make people miss. Like, he's elusive. He has that speed. So he can kind of fit that offense. But, I mean, like I said, you was with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, man. Like, come on, man. Like, you can't get it done with them. Hey, TJ, my rewind to the beginning. I came late. Hey, man, please do. That on Wing Sports Podcast. Yeah, please do. We about to wrap it up anyway, man. It's been a long day for your boy. I can't wait to get rid of Carr. He cares more about being liked than actually being a good quarterback. Well, yeah, he does have a little bit of a politician type vibe with him, but I honestly think that, he is one of those people that care what people think about him. Like, you can tell, like, you know, in his press conferences and stuff, talking about when people booing him, like, you're a quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, I don't care how well you play. One day you're going to get booed by somebody because of a performance. So I do think that he kind of wears his heart on his sleeve. And, you know, that's not necessarily a good thing. You know, I think that, you know, it could be a motivational tool for you, but I don't know. I don't know. You can't be a quarterback in the National Football League, be successful, and have thin skin. I'm excited about the confidence in Tipton. We might have found the guy. Yeah, I think the Saints think that, and that's the reason why I don't feel like they forced him to go out there. I've never seen AK line up in the eye or follow a fullback. Hope it feels good to him. Wait, that sounds crazy. Paul. Glad to see us hold on to Rico Payton. The way that he played gives that CD type vibe. Maybe it's just a tattoo. Yeah, I think he definitely made a case for himself. I'm happy for the kid, man. He worked hard, and you know, hard work pays off. You know, unless you Isaiah Foskey, then being a second round pick pays off. But I like the kid. I think that, you know, he's going to be you know, a good player. You know, I think he's going to be a contributor in some capacity for the New Orleans Saints. He's going to do something special at least once or twice throughout the season, rather be on special teams or filling in for somebody if they were to go down. Knock on wood. Hopefully that does not happen. But I want to say thank you all for checking out the State of the Saints podcast. We got 347 people watching this right now. Please hit the like button. Please hit the like button if you enjoy the show. We're trying to grow as a show. I would appreciate if everybody just hit the like button. If 348 people hit the like button right now, then we'll have 348 likes, and, you know, that can strengthen us, you know, and be able to be seen by more eyes. And, you know, that's what the goal is, man, for us to grow as a podcast. And I really appreciate everybody that's chiming in. We're a very interactive podcast. For those that are new, that just stumbled across this podcast, we do this, you know, quite often. I will be down in New Orleans week 1 for the Carolina Panthers Saints game. I'll be at the Little Easy Restaurant, 635 Julia Street in downtown New Orleans. Probably maybe like 10-minute walking distance from the Superdome. We're going to do the pregame show there, go to the Dome, then come back to the restaurant and finish up with the postgame. So if you're in that area and you go into the game, make sure you stop by, say hello. You know, come into the Little Easy Restaurant, make sure you get something to eat. I mean, they have some really good drinks there as well. So make sure that you stop by. I'm extremely excited for the opportunity. And also, you can check out previous episodes of the State of the Saints podcast. They are available to you right here on YouTube in the archives. And you can check out Bleacher Report as well. Saints Talk with Timothy J. Jones. I did a talk on the Final 53. Shouts out to some of the individuals that came over there and, you know, saw that episode. It is available on Bleacher Report. Just look up Timothy J. Jones, or you can click on the New Orleans Saints. The video should be available to you. The NFC South Roundtable is available every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. We just did an episode today, if you're actually watching this on a Tuesday. So, I mean, a lot of podcasts, a lot of content being put out. I'm a part of a lot of things, man, but I don't get tired because I love what I do. I love talking sports. I love, you know, giving you all the real deal Holyfield. Probably going to do a show tomorrow morning, a little bit of a maybe lunchtime show. I got some father duties I got to do, man. Got to make sure my boy stay up on his homework, man. He working on his writing, his ABC. So, you know, I'm a father first at the end of the day. So won't, you know, be doing a podcast tomorrow around this time. But I'm just letting everybody know you probably can catch, well, no, not probably, you can catch it around noon. I'll make sure I put that link out. That's why you got to hit that bell for notifications. We're not one of those shows that come on at a certain time. So you might want to just, you know, hit that bell for notifications so you'll be able to catch the State of the Saints podcast when it does come out. Thank you all so much. Shouts out to everybody here. Shouts out to everybody that couldn't make it to the live. Also, I want to let everybody know that this show is brought to you by BetUS. We are powered by BetUS. Sign up today, and you get 125% on your first 3 deposits. So, for example, if you was to put down $100, you'll get $225. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, right? So it gives you more of an opportunity to win more money. The link is in the description. And if you don't believe me, you can go ahead and ask Michael Vick.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
And of course, always gamble responsibly. Shout out to all the people watching, all the people that couldn't make it. Shouts out to the After Show boys.
Shouts out, shouts out, shouts out, shouts out, shouts out to them After Show boys. Shouts out, shouts out, shouts out, shouts out, shouts out to them After Show boys. They be tweeting and be posting, they be tweeting and be posting, they be tweeting. Yeah, them After Show boys. They be tweeting and be posting, they be tweeting and be posting, they be tweeting. Yeah, them After Show boys.
Out to all After Show boys, After Show girls out there. Thank you all so much. This has been the State of the Saints podcast. And until next time, all I got to say is, who dat?
Thank you for listening to my daddy's podcast.
Hey, don't let these tears fool you. It's all dog around this mug. I'm good.